Hello, so for this video, I want to talk about the state of the Washington Wizards and how I feel about it because although this Wizards team this season wasn't really expected to make a significant jump, if I'm being honest, I'm still disappointed in how they're performing their rebuild as of this moment because don't get me wrong, there are some positive factors that I'll get to in a second, but there are also a lot of unnecessary ones that I feel like go against all the progress that Washington is trying to make. We can start with the positives ones, get those out of the way. First off, Kyshawn George continues to look amazing. I mentioned him in one of my earlier videos, you can go check that out if you're curious. But yeah, all of that efficient basketball goodness that he's producing in the first couple games, it has continued and it's looking pretty legit. And so far, he is easily my selection for most improved player because I feel like in just all aspects of basketball, he's gotten so much better. Whether it's driving, that mid-range game, oh man, these past few games, it feels like, or maybe not the Boston and New York ones, but I mean against Orlando, it seemed like he was pretty automatic. Again, how he uses that off-arm to create separation, his three-point shooting and the percentages as well. And Kyshawn's playmaking, I also feel like it's kind of underrated. And I only say kind of because he's still very turnover prone, especially when he's out in transition. Kind of feels like he's rushing a lot of the times. But aside from making those few mistakes, usually you would see Kyshawn making the right pass. I'm not sure if a floor general is in the works, but I mean, I'd say that's something to take into consideration. And last, but certainly not least, Kyshawn George has made strides in his defense. It's already kind of hard to push him out of the way because he has such a big body, but just in terms of positioning, trying to get in front of his man, I'd say that's also something he's very good at. Now, I still believe that Coulibaly is Washington's best defender by a mile, but Kyshawn George ain't too far behind him, and just overall, not only am I loving what I'm seeing from him so far, it's looking very sustainable. Like, I could see this consistently being a thing going forward. And to summarize everything, just shout out to Kyshawn George. He's turned himself from what I've initially seen as a very raw prospect into a legitimate building block for Washington's future. If Washington has any plans of taking that next step forward, I firmly believe Kyshawn George is a part of that blueprint now. Next positive thing I can discuss is Alexander Sarr. He looks so much more comfortable. He's much more efficient now, and yes, if we take a look at his rookie year, then it certainly wouldn't take a lot to improve from those numbers, but still Sarr is showing a lot of positive things on both sides of the floor. There's still some stuff that he needs to work on. It's to be expected, but I'd say he is looking more and more like that number 2 pick, especially against that recent matchup against Boston. So shout out to those two players. Seems like they're making tremendous progress in their development. And the last positive, Tre Johnson, he's pretty much delivering what we all expected. We expect him to be a bucket getter. He has done that and then some. It's really clear that he doesn't lack any confidence, and I've been pretty impressed by how efficient he's been. I'm not sure how much of it can keep up, but still, he's getting buckets, that's for sure. However, that's as far as I can get in terms of positives for this current Wizards rebuild, because oh boy, there's a bunch of negatives we have to dissect. First off, probably the most obvious one if you've seen any Wizards game, it is their veterans. Low-key, even though I'm not a Wizards fan, it is very infuriating to watch them. Usually when we discuss rebuilding teams or just younger teams in general, there's always seems to be this sentiment of, see, this is why young guys need to have vets in the locker room. These youngins on the court are out of control and they really need some stable presence to calm them down, teach them the way, and that is true majority of the time, but for this Wizards team, it is the exact opposite. Honestly, it feels like Washington could be better off if the veterans weren't on the court. In fact, it feels like the veterans are playing like they're the rookies or they're the sophomores of the NBA, and that's honestly unbelievable to say. And yes, it sounds crazy initially, but when you look at their shot selection, where they're chucking it up from, it just leaves to me having a huge questioning of their veteran leadership. And yeah, some of their shots not falling down, it's just them not converting the shots that they usually make in the past. But still, those situations are only a tiny bit of just a huge conundrum that the veterans have built. When I look at how Chris Middleton and CJ McCollum are performing, not only does it lead to some very bad offensive possessions, it also leads me to the belief that they've regressed big time in terms of their game IQ. And I'm sorry if that sounds really blunt, but when I think of veteran presence on a rebuilding team, I'm thinking of guys who just come in, kind of slow the mess down. You know, if a team, for example, goes too fast, commits so many turnovers, that veteran can just be subbed in, take his time selecting his shots or creating stuff for others, you know, reading the game better because he's been in said game for who knows how long, essentially. Funny enough, that's what Khris Middleton was last year, in my opinion. From the few Wizards games I've seen, he was that calming presence. He got to his usual spots, he even set up stuff for others, like he made some nice pick and roll passes to Sarr, and overall it felt like he didn't really take away from any of the young guys. But for some reason, as we fast forward to this season, it's just the plain opposite, antithesis, whatever synonym you could think of. And CJ McCollum, oh my god, you've seen the thumbnail. It's not the efficiency plateauing that makes my mind melt. I mean, it is a bit of that, but mostly it is just him kind of being selfish a lot of the times. So many possessions where it just feels like he's trying to do stuff on his own. Now yes, at the beginning of some games you will see him make, the right reads, passes that veterans are supposed to make. But down the line, we just see less of that and more of CJ ISOing. Feels like he's trying to recapture what he manifested in years past with New Orleans and Portland, except it's not working. Instead, it's so detrimental because there are already a lot of games where Kyshawn George and Alexander Sarr, where Tre Johnson, like those young guys have fantastic games and they're just stuck to the corner, just put aside because CJ says, oh, it's CJ time. And I'll be clear, ISOing on a lot of possessions is not just a CJ McCollum problem. That happens a lot of times. Cam Whitmore is guilty of that too. But when I think of ISOing, taking time out of the clock, when I think of tendencies like that, that's usually stuff from younger players, not veterans who have played over 10 seasons. And this isn't just a once in a while thing. This is a repeated trend, almost like a habit. And I've seen some jokes about this situation that, oh, CJ's just doing his job to lead the tank, to make sure Washington gets a higher selection in the lottery. Some of that is pretty funny. But again, as I mentioned earlier, it's detrimental. That word, I feel like, is such a perfect depiction of this situation. Because yes, even though this is a rebuilding year, not much is expected in terms of winning. The purpose of a rebuilding year is supposed to develop your guys, develop the guys you drafted, all of that young talent you have assembled. And Washington has had already a few games going to clutch time. Those young guys need that experience. They need to know how to handle those type of scenarios. But if they're stuck in the corner because CJ McCollum and Khris Middleton, that just takes away so much of that development, in my opinion. I mean, what is the purpose of rebuilding, going through this rebuild, if you don't involve the young guys or trust them enough in a lot of these tough situations? I mean, isn't that the point? We've seen promising stuff already, so just build on that and just see what they're made of, essentially. I feel like we've seen so little for these young guys. I mean, I know none of them are going to be that leading number one option. You aim to have that in the 2026 draft, but you also can't waste opportunities to test them. I feel like the Wizards have already missed several golden chances, and the only silver lining I could find in this is that there's still plenty of season left. There's still plenty of time in the season left, excuse me, so maybe we might see possessions where Kyshawn is finally handling the ball in the clutch. But my goodness, I mean, usually I would feel bad for veterans on rebuilding teams, but in this situation I feel the complete opposite. I feel bad for the young guys and not the veterans. And I know some people might say, oh, we have to trade CJ or Khris then. And Khris, I could see that potentially happening. But for CJ, I would just shut him down for the rest of the season. He's on an expiring contract. Eventually, that will help your salary cap space. That will open up so much. I mean, if he doesn't prefer to be shut down, like if his ego doesn't allow that, then at least have him come off the bench. And I guess it's a nice transition. Why is Tre Johnson still on the bench? He is not the 15th or 28th pick. He is your 6th pick. And if we expand on that for a second, that pick, with better luck in the lottery, would have been 4th or 3rd. Would you have a 3rd or 4th pick coming off the bench? No, absolutely not. So I feel like just having Tre Johnson replace CJ McCollum, I feel like that would be the right move. I know if we look at Coach Keefe, that scenario might not only seem impossible for him, but if that scenario does eventually happen, he might look at Cam Whitmore or Bob Carrington. But those two, I don't really prefer them to start. I mean, Carrington has struggled. You would also see what your 6th overall pick will be made of with more playing time. I mean, the stats he's providing off the bench, and you give more minutes to that, I mean, come on. The sky could be the limit here. I mean, in terms of the lineup I would put out if I was Coach Keefe, I would put Kyshawn George at the point guard. I feel like what we've seen already, I would trust him enough to get those point guard minutes. Seems like he's the only valuable playmaker in this Wizards group. You replace CJ McCollum with Tre Johnson. You still need Coulibaly and Sarr for that defense. And the 3-man, who knows, that's up for to decide. I don't really have the time for that now because I want to focus my attention on Coach Keefe. I feel like he is such a big negative already. In terms of what he's providing on the basketball court, I don't want to sound too harsh. I'm sure he's a nice guy, but I feel like his time has passed as the coach for Washington, and I understand kind of why Will Dawkins and company want to hold on to him as of now, because, constantly changing head coaches here and there. I mean, I feel like Coach Keefe has only been a head coach for 1.5 seasons, it feels like. So I do sort of get that. However, Coach Keefe is also responsible for these rotations, for the lineups, for all the stress that the veterans are giving me. I feel like he's responsible for all of that, and yeah, some of the blame could go to the players because it's up to them to make the shots, it's up to them to execute the plays. But I feel like with the roster that's at hand, Coach Keefe is not utilizing them properly. And it's not just how much he's forcing the ball into the veterans' hands, it's also the shot attempts we see from other personnel. No offense to Koulibaly, I feel like he can be a really good 3-and-D threat, but I do not want to see him be a recipient of a dribble handoff and try to drive and force something at the rim. I don't feel like that's his game. Another example could be Corey Kispert. I mean, he has some plays called to him similar with Koulibaly. And even though Kispert is not bad when penetrating the lane, I would much rather have 90% of the play calls being assigned to him be him coming off the screens behind the perimeter. Or at least if you want him going down the lane, have it be off the ball. Don't just have him be the main ball handler coming off of a Sarr screen or something like that. So again, Coach Keefe is not the worst coach in the league, and who knows, maybe there's something he's seeing that I'm not. And again, I am just a guy here rambling in some random video. He has some coaching experience under his belt, so maybe he has this process that might take a lot of time. But I don't know, that's just some hypothetical I'm providing. What I've seen from him, I just don't think it's enough. Ooh, and one final thing to note, I hate how little of playing time, how little minutes AJ Johnson is getting. All of the action that we're seeing from AJ is from garbage time. I mean, people were talking about Chris Middleton's return in Milwaukee and how, he got more of a chance to kind of just ball out and at least show that he still got it. AJ Johnson was a part of that deal too. You couldn't have at least given him some minutes in that game. That kind of left me iffy, but that was only game 1. So it's like maybe we might see more of an uptick, possibly, and no, it hasn't happened. And I'm not saying putting in AJ Johnson will change the outlook or anything, but at least give him 10 to 15 minutes. Is that really that much to ask? I mean, just putting him in the game, you add another downhill threat, another player that could very well benefit your goal to maintain a high pace. Not only will he get you some actions in the fast break, he could very well be that driving presence that Washington is sorely looking for. I mean, all those actions that I referred to earlier, those handoffs being initialized and Kispert and Koulibaly being the ones to handle them, it could very well be AJ Johnson stepping up and fulfilling that role. And honestly, I feel like that's another reason as to why Coach Keefe is such a huge flaw for Washington, and I know this will be the case. I know that when he eventually gets that call to let him know that he's no longer the coach of the Wizards, I know there will be such an outbreak. Like, oh, what do you expect on him from this terrible Wizards team? Oh man, he wasn't given a fair opportunity. There's only so much you can do, blah 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 blah. Even though that's the case, I know so well that's the opposite. I know those people have not watched the Wizards games. I better not hear none of that. Yeah, that concludes this video. That concludes this passionate rant. But let me know what you guys think. What are your thoughts on Washington and the direction they're taking overall? Let me know in the comments down below. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.